the second entry element that we talked about was the extended compound curve. And that looked like this. Where this is the baseline. Header line, first and second ascenders. Okay, we're gonna look at some letters that have this as the entry element. Okay, now the first one is the letter K. And the K, the backbone of the K is the universal line of beauty, which has already appeared in all of these letters, well, all of these top letters, and the Y. It is not in the U. Okay, so I like to make the backbone first and then add the entry element. Some people do it the other way, but I like seeing where the letter is going to end up and then adding the entry element. Okay, so I draw the universal line of beauty, then the entry element. Okay, the rest of the K, we actually have this universal line of beauty shape again, except it won't have a terminal dot and it will only be 2 spaces tall. So I'm going to start up here, make that same shape, and my ink just pulled up a little bit. I'll write it again. So the first stroke is the universal line of beauty continuing to a terminal dot, and then we add the entry element. I like to start above the terminal dot with my compound curve. And then when I connect it, this is something I kind of struggled with a lot when I was learning the capital letters. It doesn't have to physically connect to the stem. With this shape, it's kind of hard to make it a smooth transition. So if you just make the shape and then kind of let it look like it's transitioning, but it doesn't actually have to touch, that can help with the spacing. Okay, so again, we're going to try this smaller version of the universal line of beauty. And we're aiming for approximately the header line. After that, I like to make a little loop similar to the little loop we made on the R and the B. And then we're going to finish this with the same shape that we finished the R. Just as a reminder, we finished the R with the second half of the compound curve. So rather than starting a compound curve here, we just think that we're starting at the top, come down and back up. So same thing with the K. When I made this shape, it was a little thicker and not quite as on the slant as I would like. So let's try this K again. I hope it's not a surprise to you that K is one of the more challenging letters for me to write. Okay, universal line of beauty. Extended compound curve entry element, which before I said to start above the terminal dot, you can even start a little out to the left and make it a little more free when I was going over the entry elements. The previous couple videos ago, this one that I made starts really far out to the left, and the overturned part of the compound curve is wider than the underturned part. So I'll show you what that looks like. If we start out here to the left a little bit, come up, down, and back up. Again, I'm not too worried about connecting this to the stem. Okay, let's try this part again. The universal line of beauty, and then end with a compound curve. So these shades should be parallel. And one tip for the K, you can kind of see that these are looking closed together right here. So if you start the main stem down a little higher and then you start that part of the K a little higher up. Okay, I just did exactly the opposite of what I meant to do. So I meant to start the universal line of beauty a little lower. Okay, then if we start this a little higher, you see how this starts below the second to center and this starts a little bit above. That can make it look a little less closed in here to get like closed spacing. Okay, let's move on to the next letter. So the next letter that uses this entry element is the letter H. The letter H also has the universal line of beauty, so it starts the exact same way as the K. Okay, I'm gonna draw the next couple strokes and then I'll explain. So making a hairline up, okay, so this hairline, it crosses through the first downstroke, but I lifted my pen so I don't drag the ink. And then when we come up and around, almost like an ascending stem loop, and then finish it off with a downstroke and come back up. So again, we make the first stroke and then the entry element, and then you can start this hairline below the baseline too if you want, and then coming up and around. Okay, before I come down, so this shape, when it goes through here, it's not going to be completely horizontal. It's the whole way it's going to be curving up slightly, and then when you come back in and down, you want to make sure that you're leaving enough space to make the H wide enough, but not too wide. And it'll be pretty obvious when you're making it if it looks too wide. If you do have right now I have a little bit more of a gap between the two downstrokes for this one than I do for this one, so you could add a little bit of a shade in the middle. If this movement is uncomfortable for you, and it can be kind of difficult to aim, you could make the downstroke first. And a lot of people do this. This way, for some reason, it's easier for me. But you could make this downstroke first. So this is almost like the letter lowercase l, where we're just coming down, starting thin, swelling, coming back to a point and back up. And then you can come up and around. You can even add a little bit of a shade back through here. So this looks too wide in my opinion. I tend to get better spacing when I come up, but if this is better for you, then do it that way. Okay, so that's the letter H. And now the letter Z. Okay, so this letter also starts with, it also has the universal line of beauty, but we're not going to end with a terminal dot. We're actually going to make a little loop, and this finishes with, basically it's a descending stem loop and an exit stroke, and then we have the same entry element, this extended compound curve shape. So for these letters, I like to draw the universal line of beauty first and then add the compound curve, but for the Z, usually I start with the compound curve and then make the downstroke, make the loop, and finish. Okay, we have two more letters that have this entrance stroke, and for those I also like to start with the actual entry element, and those letters are V and W. Okay, so V is the first one that we have our capital stem that is a vertical curve. So this was stem number 4, and you want this to be approximately perpendicular to the base line. And then we're going to finish this with the second stem that we learned, which was the hairline upstroke that is the same shape as the universal line of beauty. So I'm going to start with the hairline, come up to the right, follow the angle, and then come out. And you can either stop here, or if you want, you can add that terminal variation at the top. So come out, up, and then you can make a dot. So V looks like a pretty complicated shape, but really it's just a combination of our entry element number 2, and then our stem number 4 with a little bit of curve, and then our stem number 2. And W is pretty similar to V. Starts the same way with our compound curve entry element, another vertical stem, and for these letters I like to give them a lot of curve. And then we're going to make another curvy hairline. This one for the W, and you'll see why in a second, I like to make it a little less slanted than this hairline. Okay, then we're going to finish off with the hairline, universal line of beauty. Okay, so like I said, this hairline, if you make it too angled, so right now it's somewhere in between vertical and 55 degrees, and if you were to make it really slanted, then the W would look too wide. And even right now, my W is looking a little bit wide. I'm gonna try it again. So start with the compound curve, vertical line, and then come up with a thin line, back down again, and up again. Okay, so W is a pretty wide letter. If you were to make it, I'll use this space right here. I'll show you what it would look like if it was really too wide. Okay, so if you come out and over too far, so this is our normal hairline upstroke, but if you do that with the W, then it starts to look really wide. So you don't want to do this. You want to keep the hairline upstroke pretty close to your downstroke, and then it'll make it look more like a W. Okay, so these are the letters that have this compound curve entry element, and most of them, or the first couple we learned, also have this universal line of beauty, and then these at the end have the vertical curve and our hairline upstroke universal line of beauty.